Welcome to the Data Career Podcast. Here's your host, Avery Smith.
Hey everyone, how is it going? I hope you are doing very well. I am doing awesome on this Friday afternoon because I'm here with Greg Conquillo, and he's awesome. Greg, welcome to the Data Career Podcast.
Avery, thank you so much for having me, and it's great to be here with the audience. It's an honor to be here, and I'm happy to talk about everything data or everything not data. So thank you for inviting me in.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited to have you here. I was just posting yesterday on my Instagram. I was like so excited to have you. For those who don't know Greg, go ahead and connect with him right now if you're on LinkedIn. I'll give you a quick introduction to who he is, but you can tell pretty quickly how much value Greg brings and how much he knows based off of his LinkedIn. But Greg Conquillo is constantly adding and sharing value to the data community. He's currently working as a technology manager at Amazon, where he helped shape their AI vision. And he was nominated as one of LinkedIn's top voices in data science and artificial intelligence in 2020. He's an amazing person to follow on LinkedIn, as he's always posting interesting content and free guides. So definitely want to learn from Greg. He's a great resource. Thank you, everyone who's joining live. I saw that Ron's here. Thanks for joining live, Ron. Everyone else who's listening on the podcast, thank you for listening. And let's get right into it. Greg, how did you get into data? Because you actually have a degree in industrial engineering, right? How did you end up falling into the data world?
Yeah, so you said it right. So I guess I can say what led me to industrial engineering, being from a country in the Caribbean, Haiti, to be more precise. I always wanted to bring industries into a country like mine, my home country, and thinking about how to produce a product many times with consistency was what led me to industrial engineering. Now, when it comes to industrial engineering, the core of our specialty is to optimize complex systems, putting these systems together and optimizing them. And that involves including people, money, process, other smaller systems together. And for that, you need data. You need data to optimize. And if you think about this as a good segue into what we call now data science, industrial engineers are well positioned to understand what the requirements are. It's just that me, from a career perspective, I happen to stick a little bit more towards the business side of things versus being on the technical side, which, as you know, today, data scientists are more oriented towards.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you're totally right that industrial engineering is not actually a common degree. I don't feel like that many people end up getting an industrial engineering degree, but an industrial engineering degree is actually one of the best degrees you could possibly get to transfer into data science, in my opinion. I mean, did you feel like a lot of your the skills and the things you learned in your degree have transferred?
I think so. Yes, absolutely. It helped me understand the technical side way better. Now, I can't go too deep into coding requirements and things like that. However, in the grand scheme of things, what are we looking for when we put systems together? So every data science projects is looking to put a system together, and many times. So when it comes to supply and demand type of things, so when the business show up with many use cases, and data scientists have to find ways to keep up with these use cases by producing different models to keep up with this demand. So you have the supply demand balance. So we are good at that from a supply chain perspective. You have optimization of systems, operations research is another area where we excel. So when it comes to optimizing, for example, tricks to optimize neural networks and things like that, I think industrial engineers can deep dive and get better at this and easily understand these models and how to create best practices around optimizing these systems. I think the whole idea about MLOps, to me, it's about optimizing pipelines, delivering faster and quicker. Those are the things that fall under continuous improvements. And if we're talking about continuous improvements, we're talking to industrial engineers. So in other words, it's a matter of where you want to focus, because one I guess call out that I can make about industrial engineering is that it's so general, right? So it's we can navigate everywhere. I can work at a hospital, minimizing patient visit time. I can work at optimizing ambulance routes for a network of hospitals, right? So to increase or reduce the travel time when they are called. I can work at at a bank to minimize how long somebody has to wait in line or something like that. So we could be in manufacturing, which is where I started, to predict or forecast machine breakdowns, and create some maintenance program. You name it. I can set up statistical controls to make sure I reduce defects down the production line. So we're pretty much everywhere, and we were versed. It's a matter of where do we want to focus our attention to, so we can excel.
Yeah, you're so right. You guys are applied statistics in big systems, like you said, always improving the process. I guess going to your first job out of college, you said that you were kind of, or maybe not first job out of college, but in the past you've worked on manufacturing improvements and stuff like that. I got your LinkedIn profile right here. I'm looking. You also worked at Avery Dennison for a while, right?
That's right. Another Avery, huh?
Yeah, another Avery, the lesser Avery, the less cool Avery, but yeah, like you said, I'm just looking at the different places that you've worked. You've worked in so many different industries, and that's one thing that's really cool about data science and in industrial engineering is you don't necessarily have a domain. Your domain is improving other people's domains using the power of data and the power of stats, which is like such a cool job because you could end up in so many different industries in your career, which is so fun. I think you never a dull moment. Am I right?
That's correct. And that's why I advise anyone to really focus on understanding the business model. What is the purpose? What is the vision of that business model? And also, what are the pain points, right? You're trying to achieve. So once you have a good understanding of that, or once you understand how to peel the onion and discover issues, you will have a nice bank of projects that you can work on by leveraging data. So if you become a great inspector, a great interviewer, no need to be the subject matter expert inside of a business, but as a scientist or a data scientist, you need to be very good at interviewing people and surfacing issues, surfacing gaps, or understanding whether data science can help or not, and things like that. So those are the things that make data-centered people very valuable and effective at what they do.
Yeah, I love that. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Basically, what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying for instance, let's say you're a data scientist, or I actually kind of hate that term, data scientist. Let's just say you're someone who analyzes data. You have data analytics skills. You can go to any industry, and you don't necessarily have to know anything about that industry. What you said is you have to be a good listener. You have to be a good interviewer. How do you develop those skills? Because what you're saying is you don't, for instance, I interviewed Matt Francis on my podcast a couple episodes ago, and his background is in oil and gas. And he recently just started a new job at Kellogg's, and now he deals with, groceries and cereal. What you're saying is it doesn't matter that he has the oil and gas background. He can learn all he needs to learn about cereal and the grocery stores by listening to other people. Is that what you're saying, basically?
That's correct. So major, just about any business ever has a big picture process, right? So they ingest an input, they make a transformation, and they create an output. That output is consumed by an entity or an individual who sees value in that input. So with that, comes a business, right? That's what this is. Usually business models are built like this since the history of humankind doing business in the world, right? So we started in a very rudimentary practice, which is banters, trading goods and things like that. But at the end of the day, you have to produce that good and then exchange it with someone else, or just exchange it with monetary uh, you know, uh, practices. So, in other words, now you can start peeling the onion in multiple areas, but you have to figure out what you're trying to fix. Are you trying to get more clients, more customers? Or are you trying to make it easier for customers to find these transformed goods? Or are you trying to make the transformational piece what transforms the input into the output? Are you trying to optimize this, make it more effective? You need to understand where you are, and for that you need to find the subject matter experts in each of these areas and talk to them and understand what they're going through, so you can start taking these back and create your project list, prioritize by impact and effort that you have to put in there, and then figure it out, right? So you become the subject matter expert by interviewing the subject matter expert. And remember, it's all about building muscle memory. You do it often, you build muscle memory in terms of how to interview people. You get better and better at asking the right questions. So all of that comes with practice.
I love that because you're totally right. I mean, obviously, this is a very important skill. You have to know. I often say on this podcast, doing data science for data science sake is stupid. We shouldn't do it. It's dumb, right? The only reason we should do data science is to improve business outcomes, to
Exactly.
bring value to the business. Because if I have say I made the world's best neural net in the world, it's amazing. If it doesn't bring any dollars or any like social good or any like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so we always need to be providing for the business. That's the whole reason why, these analytics things exist. But it's actually kind of interesting. And you kind of talked about it here. Let me ask you this. Does the business come to the data scientist and say, hey, we have this problem. We want this solution. Can you fix it for us? Or does the data scientist come to the business and say, hey, you're doing things like this right now. If you did it this way, it would be more effective. Which way does it go?
I think it will depend on the company culture, right? So, it in the in the case of a company that is pro having the business folks drive things, they should be responsible if they are data literate, of course, and they should push that. So it all starts with the culture, right? Ultimately, I think my personal opinion is that you want your business folks to be data literate, to be very data centered, and understand um, the areas that they know they cannot solve themselves through intuition they've built along the years, or through simple rules, if then type rules. So these hard to answer questions, they need to be very good at surfacing those. So for me, in my personal opinion, I think the business should be driving that. But it doesn't hurt to have a data science wing that proactively looks for these. And for that, regardless of that structure, you need that communication between the two groups. You need to make sure that if that wing looks for issues proactively, that they continuously consult with the business side when they find potential issues, that they would get alignment from the business prior to even start performing some hypothesis testings and things like that. So regardless, you have to have that collaboration between the two groups for successful to increase the success rate of these projects.
Yeah, I totally agree. I kind of asked the question, yeah, not hoping that you wouldn't say one way or the other. It definitely depends. And I think a little bit of both sometimes, like sometimes
Yes.
the business has an idea, they don't know how to do it, so they come to the data science team. Or sometimes, the data scientists, they can just notice something and they come to the business team. And I think it's kind of a circle. It's like
Yes.
it's like a chicken or the egg. Which came first? Kind of both of them.
Yeah, and what companies have to do is to kind of agree on what that flywheel will look like. That flywheel that would, perpetrate the finding of issues or finding of opportunities that are most likely to succeed when these two groups are in a perpetual communication loop. So, in a sense, ideas can come from the business as well as ideas can come from data scientists, and keep it like this. So that may work for a company. So I don't think there's
Yeah,
a right or wrong setting.
I agree. And on my podcast, so I've worked for two companies as a data scientist. One very small, like 15 people, and one very large, ExxonMobil, with like 70,000 people, kind of like Amazon big, right? Although Amazon, Exxon, very different companies, very different culture, very different products. However, and I have, to be honest, I have trashed Exxon more than once on the podcast. But one thing, I'm going to give them a compliment. One thing that Exxon actually did that was pretty interesting is we actually had a data science team embedded in our business unit. So I was part of the data science team in the research unit, but we had like kind of a sister team in the business unit. And our relationship, this was a good theoretical thing. The practitioner or the actual, execution wasn't as good. But the idea was that the business team was like integrated very tightly with the actual products and businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and they were very data literate people. And their job, and many of them were engineers or even some were data scientists, but their job was to be data literate, to know what data can do, to know what you need for data to work. And their job was to look over the businesses and try to find use cases,
Mm-hmm.
and discuss with the business how data could help them. And once they found a project, they'd actually send it to the research data team most of the time for us to execute the project. So it was almost like we had, two different teams, and one of them was, like more technical, actually doing the work. And there was this other one that was just, they were just there to tell people and explain to people and find, opportunities and prioritize the opportunities where data can help. And it sounds like that's what you've done a lot in your career, is you've basically helped people and helped teams be, data oriented to actually understand when and how can data help us. Is that true? Is that your role?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
And that's a fine flywheel you described there for Exxon, by the way. So
It was good in theory. There was definitely some hiccups on the execution. But I guess, like, how does someone become like Greg? Like, how does someone become like Greg and know where data can help? Like, how do you see those opportunities?
well, first of all, I think I wouldn't want nobody needs to be like Greg, right? But it's kind of like I can say in terms of data, I think the best way to go about it is to start by understanding its origin, where it's coming from, what are the events that triggers the creation of a new data log. So understanding that, and then through the end-to-end generation of new data. So if you want to even as a salesperson, right? So you want to understand um, how do you transform a prospect into a data that is stored in your CRM tool, say Salesforce, for example. What is that process like? What triggers that event? Is it that first phone call you make to a customer, and once that event is logged into Salesforce, what happens next to that data? What kind of analysis is being done, and how does that generate value for the business? So understanding a trail, follow the money, follow the data, kind of exercise that anybody needs to do if you want to do that. Now, there's also the analytics piece of it. Many resources out there that can help people understand what kind of analysis can be done. But before you go there, understand what the business values in terms of metrics, right? You have to find that out first, and how they came about this conclusion that these metrics are valuable for them, and why. Why are these valuable? And then how are they calculated? And with that, you can start, understanding where the data lies that helps them calculate these metrics, and then go further out and even test other hypotheses with new metrics that may even create more value to the business, because you're coming in to bring new ideas, test new solutions, and with that may come new metrics that you may want to test, and understanding the origin of data, which is a good place to start, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And those skills, you said earlier, these skills, they come with practice. They come with, experience. They're not really taught much in school. At least they weren't taught to me much in school, which can be hard, because it's really, and I've said this before, the difference between a good data scientist and a great data scientist is often their people skills.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to talk to other people, to understand business, to actually understand where data science can be applied. And that's not a technical skill. And, boot camps and master's degrees and even bachelor's degrees are really focused on just those technical skills. So it's important to exercise. I think you can learn those even without the experience, without a job. You just have to practice it. One of my favorite ways is to figure out how to live a data-driven life. So like I use my own data all the time to try to improve my life. So for instance, I have, your phone has screen time, right? Like it's keeping track of how much time you're on your phone. Do I use that data to try to improve my life? I always wear an Apple Watch. Am I using that data to try to improve my life? So there's ways that you can like try to improve, the value, the business, which in this case is me, without necessarily having the job. But you're right. It just takes experience and practice and exercise.
And also leveraging the very simple tools, right? Don't go too hard on the fancy tools, right? Excel has been here for so many years. It can deliver on many questions or many projects. So start there, manipulate data there, and try to extract some insights from this data. Practice it by understanding how your sales monthly fluctuates over the years, or how the past 3 years of sales fluctuated and what were the drivers. Discover the simple things using Excel, or even the big things. Excel can bring much complexity in for a business. It can achieve a lot of things. So there are some quite powerful tools that lie inside of Excel. So start simple and don't fall for these fancy tools out there yet.
I totally agree. I've been filming modules for my boot camp that's coming out in a couple weeks, and in one of them I'm talking about descriptive statistics and data visualization. And I'm like, honestly, descriptive statistics and data visualization and a lot of projects give you 80% of the results with 20% of the effort. Like you said, just make a graph and look at it. There's so much data that we haven't analyzed. And if we just like made a graph of it, we could understand, I mean, not everything, it's not going to make us $1 billion, but it can make us, a couple thousand. Like like you said, there's untapped insights hidden in data that we can find without having to make an ANN with million layers. You don't have to. There's easier
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, and the hard part for us is that when we look at a significant amount of data as humans, right? We find it hard to associate certain visualizations with specific events. So we rely on the machine to do that for us. So, for example, you're looking at a sales sheet or a sales graph over the past year, and you see that 1 month thing, and you can't really understand or remember what event really triggered that uh, you know you know that affected sales during that month. So you rely on a tool to give you those. And I think, but just to your point, just visualizing it will start uh, will help you start asking questions. Hey,
Yes.
what happened that month? What happened in May? How can I
Yes.
go deep dive that so I can prevent it from happening again? And that's where it matters to start small and leverage the simple tools that you have accessible to you now, and then before you go to more complex landscape.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of people ask me, you know, oh, do I need to know how to program to have a data career? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, so a data career is huge. It's a lot. There's a big space out there. Again, you could be an industrial engineer and you have a data career. You could be an accountant and have a data career. Accountants, they need help. Companies with big accounting teams, they need help. Finance teams, they leverage Excel, for example, heavily to reconcile their operational plans or accounting, to reconcile their books, etc., transactions and things. So you don't need to know programming. So there are a lot of local tools that exist. Again, Excel, that you can leverage. And then added to that, in the recent years, we've seen the emergence of great quality visualization tools, Tableau, Power BI, that are very flexible into connecting with other data sources that you can leverage to generate your visualizations. And even these tools are beefed up by some key features like ML, where you can leverage a question, natural language processing to find key business insights about your data, where you don't have to learn how to code to leverage the built-in ML feature of Power BI, for example. Just drag and drop kind of approach. So who says you have to know how to program? There's a minimum you have to learn, but not the hardcore.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we've been talking about a lot of positions right now, even, like these people that what data can do, and you have the ability to have the eye to see where it can be applied in business. And you can just tell someone else to do it. That's also a spot where you don't necessarily need you don't have to know how to do it. You just have to know what the outcome would be if you did do it. I did want to go back to a little bit about, business oriented people and business oriented teams. You mentioned earlier that you really think they should be data literate. Well, why is that?
Well, I think like any engine, there's a source that fuels it, and pretty much data is what fuels businesses. If you consider a business as an engine, and that's what gives you a pulse check in terms of how far you can go, right? Your think level will tell you when the car is going to turn off, when it's running out, or how far you can go in terms of mileage, etc. And the difference between a fuel engine and things like that is that you can transform the data to kind of answer other questions, right? Or how do I generate new opportunities for myself? Really, data is seen as a pulse check, right? So, as a business oriented person, you want to understand whether the performance of your business is in part to the business's goal, mission, vision. So, those things are very important. without knowing, for example, how many customers are unhappy with your product, is not knowing how many customers are unhappy with your products can be very detrimental to your business if you don't mine that data and understand what's going on and address it in a timely manner. So in today's world, we can't rely on just siloed teams to manipulate data and understand what's going on in the grand scheme of things. You need everybody from a cultural perspective to understand what's going on by leveraging data and manipulating it at the simplest level to make some quick, discoveries and take quick actions. And businesses today have to be very flexible. We cannot wait all the time for big data projects to come to life before we make decisions. So you need to be flexible enough to do some quick analysis and make quick decisions to stay afloat or
I
to stay
like
alive.
that. I like that. You don't have to be completely proficient, but you have to know enough to, data scientists, it's hard to get on the priority list sometimes. So maybe you can do some initial digging yourself. And with that, like, how can more of these like business oriented teams ensure that their data projects don't end up dead? There's like that statistic out there. I don't believe it, but I don't know if you've seen the statistic. It's like that, like 80% of data projects fail. Like, how do we lower that number? I also don't believe that number, but let's pretend like that actually is the number. Why are these projects failing?
Yeah, I guess a lot of the nature of data science projects are kind of like trial and error. Um,
Yeah.
by nature, right? So
Yeah.
when it comes to trial and error, what do you hear? You already hear a lot of failures will happen, right? That's
Yeah.
one. Another thing too is lack of communication. Really, communication between who owns that final metric, who has the yes, no say for that metric that is struggling or that needs improvement. That misalignment that happens with that person, that point of contact, and the people who can bring the solution. When misalignment happens, then you're doomed to fail because expectations change, and the things that we can talk about to minimize these failures is to start communications early, right? Gain alignment early. If you look into the data science life cycle, you consider the very first task, which is business problem understanding. In that sense, this is where, for me, it has lasted months. Just that cycle, right? Just that task right there,
Yeah.
where people get together to understand or agree that this is a valid problem that cannot simply be answered uh, anywhere, any other way, but through a data science solution. And then once you agree that there's a pain point there, you have to start thinking about what that solution looks like, and setting expectations with the business. So this conversation has to happen as soon as possible, and even understanding what are the risks of delivering to that solution, and make sure that business folks agree to these risks. It's all about making sure, and throughout the project itself, you want to maintain this communication so there's no drift, right? There could be some drift where business folks say, well, that's not what I was expecting here. Why did we change this? When did that change? Kind of conversation. And then you have, inside of that transformation too, you have, something like feature engineering process, figuring out what are the things that as a data scientist, I can start, I can maintain communication with the business to understand that, to make sure that they understand why we arrived at certain conclusions. So, in other words, long story short, continuous communication, I think that's the biggest fall. And typically, when projects deviate from business goals or business missions, they tend to fail. You mute.
Sorry about that. I raised my desk. I didn't want to hear the noise. There's that theme again of, what makes a good data scientist, what makes a good data project, people skills, being able to communicate. So I don't think we can emphasize that enough, that people think, oh, they hear my job. I kind of explain what I do. Oh, you're a programmer. Well, I mean, sometimes, but a lot of the times I'm a business person. I'm a marketer. I'm a, operations person, trying to actually talk to the unit and understand their problems and make sure our solutions actually solving their problem. So I think that's great advice. Another thing I was thinking about while you were kind of answering is people sometimes forget that data science has that word in it, science, you know? I come from a background of chemical engineering, and I worked inside of a chemistry lab as an undergrad. And I was a technician, and I would run experiments. And these experiments would take like 4 hours long, and sometimes it wouldn't go well. Like sometimes we forgot to plug in a tube, or we forgot to press start, or like we forgot to unplug something. And the experiment would fail, and you'd have to restart the whole thing, and it would take another 4 hours. And that happens in data science too. We're just lucky that rebuilding in data science often doesn't take 4 hours, right? You can press rerun on that code really quickly, but it doesn't mean just because it's fast sometimes doesn't mean that it's not still science. We're still trying to figure out all of this stuff. So I think that was a great point. The last thing I want to ask you is, well, I guess, yeah. Well, the last thing I want to ask you is, why do you post on LinkedIn? Because you're posting every day, and you have like this full-time job at Amazon. You're providing awesome content and interesting information for the community. What drives you, man? Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no like strict reason. I think there are some, personal reasons in terms of testing my knowledge and making sure that gain a little bit of confidence in terms of an area that wasn't part of my portfolio before. Again, to me, and I have some people who would disagree with that. I don't call myself a data scientist. I have people in my integrated machine learning family, led by many in the community here. I see one here, Manpreet. Thank you for showing up. I see you on the list here. Who would disagree and would consider me as a data science student. So when I come across different subjects that I find interesting, that I'm able to understand, I find it as a duty to share it with the community so they can grow as well. I do like to promote that. Things that I feel like are useful, I try to put my own spin into it. And with that, I open myself up to feedback, right? Good or bad. And regardless, it reinforces my knowledge of said subject. So with that, over time, I feel like it makes me better. Posting on LinkedIn also helps me practice my content generation skills, right? So I write a lot of documents at work currently, and it helps me curate a lot of paper. It helps me read faster too, because posting content also requires me to also consume a lot of content. So I have to tap into many articles, so I have to get faster at that. There are so many benefits for myself, and I'm hoping, and thank you for that the audience also see value into this. And at the end of the day, it's all about helping each other. And the last leg too is I see myself over the next years to helping more startups grow in that space too. So building an audience, I attract a lot of startup founders, co-founders that end up reaching out to me so we can discuss, look for opportunities, or how I can help them on their business model, how to lay out the strategy for their business and things like that. So with that, I need more practice to better help them reach their goals. So it's been a mutually beneficial journey that not seeing any. I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon. So I really enjoy it.
That's awesome. There was I loved how there was multiple reasons, and some of that is to, like you said, it's a symbiotic relationship. Some of that is to give, and some of that, you're not. I don't like the word take, but you're also being given to from the community. I loved what you said about I have to learn how to write better. How do I write something that's interesting to someone? How do I summarize? Because you post a lot of articles. How do I summarize the gist of an article in a way that helps someone understand it? How do I learn to read faster and consume faster and, pick out the important parts? And then all on top of that, helping the community, attracting. Anyways, it's very cool what you're doing. I love it. I think you're on the right path. I definitely love the article, so I'm sure everyone else does as well. So thank you for your contributions to the community. We really appreciate it.
Yes, I do appreciate it too. It's a humbling exercise and a humbling journey, and I continuously learn from good content creators too out there. I continuously learn from people who have platforms, right? So if you think about how you and I got in touch with each other and things like that, so I love being in different sessions as much as I can to learn from other people and hoping that other people learn from me as well. So I appreciate you inviting me again to this platform to be able to share my story and share my point of view. And I invite anyone else too to give me feedback and point me in the right direction on anything that I may have addressed. Always looking for different perspectives, and I think as the community is set up like this, being open to listening to people's different perspectives, and that's what makes the community so strong. And I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome, Greg. You're a good man. You're a humble guy. I love that. You're there in sales. There's this thing called ABC, always be closing. I've changed it to ABL, always be learning, and I can tell you're definitely someone who is always learning in their life, and super cool. I mean, just from like a perspective of you're a supervisor at Amazon, like that's obviously a prestigious company, prestigious role. And yet here you are. You're like, I want to learn from other people. So I appreciate you, man. I think that's awesome. We'll end it on this note. I just saw a comment here from Marcel Rogu, who's actually Marcel. We worked at Exxon together, right? I can't tell, but he says, "Go Gators."
This is my sign. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you so much. Go Gators, indeed.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Greg, for joining the podcast. Really appreciate it. Everyone who's listening, definitely follow Greg on LinkedIn to get those valuable curated articles and insight in all things tech and data. So give him a follow. I'll have his LinkedIn connection in the show notes as well. So
thank you again for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thanks everyone for listening. Marcel's here, Ayo's here, Sneha's here, Myra, thank you. Ron, thank you. James, thank you. Appreciate your guys' support. And I think we'll be on next week with another pod. So we'll see you guys then. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.